Welcome to another episode of the Cheerful Soundman podcast. It's a weekly show for event professionals to hear from other event professionals on the challenges and lessons of producing stellar events with a smile. I'm Eric, the owner of Bunt Backline, an event production company right here in Gainesville, Florida. Today we're talking to Alan Bisson from Toronto, Canada. He is owner or president of FireDog Creative events. And we wanted to have him on today to chat about pre-visualization and designing events and advancing those with your clients through visuals and visualization. Very excited about this chat today. Before we dive in, make sure you follow us, follow the show here on Instagram at The Cheerful Soundman. All right, let's dive in. Well, hey, Alan, how's it going?
Good, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. How's the great frozen north? Is it still frozen up there in Toronto?
There is some freezing way up in the tundra, up with the grizzly bears and Arctic fox, but we're enjoying, I think, equated to 74 degrees today. So nice breeze from the north, but
wow.
Sun
Nice.
Shining. What more could you ask for?
Very nice. Very nice. Well, we now know that you're from the frozen tundra of Canada, but tell us a little bit, tell us who you are, what you do, a little bit about yourself.
So I'm president and creative director for FireDog Creative Events, or FireDog Creative Inc., as we like to call it up in Canada, Basically, my role in the company is to develop new business and assist the planners, producers, and decor specialists in our industry, internationally as well, with fulfilling their every wish and desire on every event they ever do. Not to be confused with an AV company, because that's not what we do. We basically mold and shape events based on design parameters. Anything from hanging a million roses to making sure that a tent is set up on the beach in the Bahamas. And every step of the way, we're either drawing some iteration of that event, or we're providing comprehensive CAD drawings, site plans, and technical drawings for those types of events.
Okay, so you are not an in-house AV provider like a lot of the folks we have interviewed or talked to, but you are more, would you say it's kind of between planner and the vendors themselves, or what is your what does a typical role look like for you?
Our typical role is to saddle up next to the producer, planner, or decor people and be their right-hand person, as we're so affectionately called now. We've even been labeled as their toolbox, which is not so affectionate, but is pretty darn accurate. We have some clientele that rely on us to perform audits of quotes that they get from in-house AV providers, just to make sure everything's on the up and up, make sure it fits what it is that they're trying to accommodate. In addition to logistics and operations, making sure that timelines are kept, shipping manifests are met, carnets, which is the over U.S. border and back to Canada brokering, international shipping, anything from designing and co-designing an event right up until cleaning up the ballroom at the end of it.
Very nice. So a lot of kind of production management role, I guess, is what
Correct.
it sounds like.
Yep.
Yeah. Gotcha. Very cool. So the obvious next question for me is how did you get into that? That's kind of a very unique part of our field. How did you, I guess, even take me back further, how did you get into production and production related work in the first place?
Well, funny story is 30 years ago, and yes, I know that would make me 10. I was in the DJ realm, as we in production always start. And I was part of the AV club at high school. I was part of the high school video road shows that went around the high schools in my final grade 12 year up in Canada. And then it was a natural progression into next was stage cam for live IMAG for festivals and fairs and rock and roll. And then it was a natural transition into corporate, as DJs and live stage cam people often do. And then, oddly enough, I got into the wedding and social industry, and it became quite apparent that that's where the majority of my creative flow could be realized. It was quite by mistake. We were asked to hang 2,000 paper lanterns in a tent. I had no idea it was going to be a wedding, but apparently 15, 16 years ago, this was a new thing, and it's blossomed from there. And might add, 15, 16 years ago is when I started to draw, as we call it in CAD land, taking paper napkin CAD drawings and turning them into actual scaled drawings. But I haven't looked back in the last 16 years. My main foray is producers, planners, and designers, not dealing with the brides or the grooms or the parents of those wild and wacky kids who decide to get married. It was dealing with the designers ultimately who needed that extra little bit of assistance because they were all new to the same plan up north here.
So full disclosure, you do actually a lot of drawing for our company for Backline as a freelancer. So basically, anytime we have something that's a little more complicated, a little beyond, we do a lot of stuff in capture in-house. But kind of anytime we have either an elaborate site plan or something that's a little more complicated, like you've done arenas for us with more complex layouts. You've done some pretty massive site plans and things like that. Which is that was why I wanted to have you on. Is it's really it's interesting because that drawing aspect is I do feel like it's fairly new, even from the last. It's not that it is new. It's new that it is so prevalent. I think in our industry, it is not standard yet that everyone does it or that every company provides those visualizations, but it is actually moving more and more that direction. So a lot of the concerts we're getting now too are even looking for renders in advance of the stage design and all that. They're not taking basic drawings or basic stuff anymore. So it's really it's interesting that that's the direction you've gone. So what's something, so having been in it a little while and now transitioning into a lot of the drawing side as well as the production management, what's something you wish you would have known like earlier on or when you began your career, I guess?
I wish, and I was just talking to my wife about this, and because we're both relearning new software as we progress in our age, I wish I knew that the new software today was coming out years ago so I could prepare. Because when we talk about drawing, Eric, there's your standard AutoCAD, yes, but there's 2D and 3D drawings. So 2D is basic site plans, topographical, elevation plans, isometric views, and that's perhaps one piece of software. And then in the old days, you would have to kick it to another piece of software to get the pretty picture. You'd have to extrude all of your buildings, your walls, your moldings, your trims, your doors. Everything would have to be custom made. Nowadays, with the advent of Unreal Engine and Epic Games, it's now a seamless integration between designing in 2D. You can now design full on in 3D virtual mode, which means I can put the guitar behind you in the 3D world without having to make it in 2D. Google SketchUp, or Trimble SketchUp as it's now called, was paramount in that becoming available to the masses. So, long-winded answer to your question, I wish I knew back then the software titles today, because it's much more easy to learn and draw today than it's ever been before. With Twinmotion allows you to take any 2D or 3D file, import it in, and they have a complete repository of 3D items, from rocks to trees to landscapes, the house, the boats, the planes, anything you could ever think of to bring in. And it's fully animated was the next step, because you talked about drawings becoming more prolific. Back 10 years ago, it was a nice to have feature. Up to about
Mm,
5 years ago, it was a need to have. And I believe in the next 10 years, it's going to be a can't do the event without it.
yeah. I would 100% agree with that. In fact, one of the things, again, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is this is really, uh, what your pre-visualization, and then again, we've kind of transitioned a lot of our stuff in-house, but using you for all the big stuff. It has really been a game changer for us. So it's both from a sales perspective. So a lot of it is that. So it's because a lot of times as designers we have this idea, so they come to me with what they want to do. I come up with the production side of things, what it's going to take to accomplish what they're looking for. But a lot of times it relies on someone who doesn't necessarily understand or know the equipment to be able to visualize in their mind based off of my description. So it's really limited based on both my description and their context. And that just leaves a lot of room for either misunderstandings, misinterpretations. Now, for us, it's usually been like, whoa, that's way bigger or way cooler than I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's, oh, I thought it was going to be better than that, and
Yeah.
there's this disconnect when you don't have a point of reference. And so the other thing I think that's helped in that respect a lot is just even the prevalence of cameras and pictures. So like I have pictures of the last, 300 events we've done. So being able to give an example, hey, it looks something like this, and then take that and make a visualization and a customized package for them. I think those two things for me have been a huge game changer in sales, but also like customer satisfaction as far as like, oh, this is what I'm going to get, and then me saying this is what you're going to get, and then them actually getting what they thought. So I think it kind of closes that gap of
Mm-hmm.
them like believing my sales pitch versus me saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Here's a picture of it,
Well,
and then them saying yes,
yeah,
no, different.
tempers expectations and unrealistic expectations. The flip side could
Yeah.
be true as well. When you do a render, and as high quality as renders are now, you're naked. You have nothing to hide behind. So you either provide
Yeah.
what you quoted and showed in the render, and this is a picture speaks 1,000 words, right? So back in the
Mm-hmm.
day, you describe something, you take 1,000 words, it'd be misinterpreted, misconstrued, miscommunicated over the levels of committee members for a gala. And then you'd be like, well, I thought the drape was red. But no, we had this discussion that it was fuchsia. Well, what shade of red is fuchsia and what shade of fuchsia is red? Now with the picture though, you have nothing to hide behind. And so
Mm.
long as everyone can understand that, it really does mean increased sales in my regard because I've closed many a deal by presenting the pretty picture. Um, but that first instance where somebody says, hey, it was in the picture, it was in the picture. So you got to just
Mm-hmm.
temper expectations and keep them realistic. Because down the line, when we talk about, and this is the good part about what's about to come, is people are fixated on the picture, but the new sales tactics for Previz is moving picture. So you're not fixated on one part of an image because we don't give you that opportunity. It's self-preservation moving forward because I want you to
Mm.
focus on the entire gala. I don't want you just picking and choosing little parts to look at. You'd be looking at much like VR 360 panos. You have that ability because your mind can't compute fast enough to pick up nuances in a video. You have to stop it and look at it. So we're hedging our bets, and we know that the next phase of Previz is total animation. It's keep the pictures moving, keep them going.
Mm-hmm. So, so does that lean into, do you think that we're going to be in another 5 years or so, or I mean, I'm not asking you to be Nostradamus, but in the next few years, will we be transitioning to more of a VR previs environment, do you think? From like right now, we're giving, we have 20 different angles of something, we can do different looks and capture them and screenshot them, things like that. But do you think we're moving towards almost like, I guess the real estate industry has somewhat moved
Mm-hmm.
to this, where you can do a walk through a house, so it feels
Yeah.
like you're there. Do you think that that's where we're moving with event design as well?
I think so in the sense of, I'll see if I can convert this the right way. When you put on a VR headset and you're thrusted into the middle of a gala with moving lights and strobe lights and flashy video, drastically different than walking through a house for real estate video. So you can actually put on your goggles and walk through a house, and you could probably spend 20 minutes, half an hour in a house inside a VR environment for a live event. We beta tested this at one of the venues, the art gallery. Planners and designers were only able to keep the goggles on for about 2.5 minutes because of the motion sickness and the amount of flashing lights. And not saying they had episodes, I'm just saying they'd be a little.
It's overwhelming.
It's sensory overload. So if there was a way to temper that, and then we get back to what we talked about before was more static imagery, freeze the lights, keep the strobes off, keep the sparklies down a little bit, give them the ability to pan and tilt on their own free will, then yes, you'll see that become more prevalent. But this is just my opinion. I don't see VR as being a viable option for people to previs, because the stuff that you see in your goggles is not indicative of what is really going to be at the event, because there's some optical compression. There's some the angles and aspect ratios are off. So it's very.
So is that just would you say that's just like a immaturity of the technology at this point? Like VR is just not there yet? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the resolution just is not there yet. There's something to be said for. Yeah. I design on dual 4K monitors, but you're never going to stick dual 4K monitors in a VR headset 1 inch away from your eyeballs. So you'll never have that resolution. And because you're tethered, processing power for VR goggles is either from your massive laptop that we're drawing on, or it's a self-contained system. But that self-contained system hasn't got the legs to display what it is you're trying to display in realistic. You know when a render is fake. You just know. Yeah, there's no depth of field. There's no. You just know it, and you can't trick your eye anymore or your brain anymore with VR than you could with a 360 panel on your 4K display. So as much as I'd like to see VR come in, I don't think it's not for this industry.
And maybe has potential with some tweaks. It sounds like it's probably way off, way far off from being practical for most users, even with some technological improvements.
From supply and demand for clientele viewing, yes, but one big benefit is for LDs and video directors to basically previs their events with the goggles on, because we know that those people can handle the flashing lights all night long. So and if you're really an introvert and you want to sit in your basement and work on an entire concert, throwing on VR goggles and your favorite tunes is one way to do it, because you have 360 view. So if you've got totems or pillars of moving lights all the way around the stadium, you don't have to mouse your screen left and right to view your entire stadium. You just turn your head left and right and you see the entire stadium. So it's more intuitive or more like real life. And I know a couple of chaps overseas that's the only way that they'll previs their events is in VR.
Interesting. I think drawing, this is my prediction, is I think the actual just previs drawing, giving nice renders with multiple perspectives, multiple POVs to a client is going to just be standard for anyone who is charging industry standard rates for production. I think there's plenty of people who won't do them, and those are like, I think the bottom feeder level for a while won't get into it. But I think anybody like mid-sized to large shops, like, I'm a small to mid-sized shop, we're having to do it for most of our bigger events now to really, to close the deal or really convince the client as well.
Well, you're trying to convince a client they spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they now want proof of concept. They want to
Yeah.
know that what you're writing on paper and what you're describing in all your enthusiasm can actually be done. Um, we used to have a running joke in the drawing world. Um, if you were within a foot on your measurements, you were good, because that's just the industry up here allowed that to happen. Now we're talking within the inches because they want
Hmm.
butts and seats. They want as many people as they can jam into capacity, and they want every last square inch to be ROI. They want it to be because you're charging per person, or you're a venue who charges with butts and seats. So they want to make sure that you are minuscule bang on. And like I said, before it
Hmm.
used to be it used to be a nice to have. Now, like you said, it's going to become more of a requirement. And yes, there are production houses that just don't need to do it because they're built on quantity. They'll just take every event they can get and
Hmm.
use what is in house and not really do too much creative. And for them, that's fine. There's no judgment there. But for up and coming event houses or designers or decor people, proof of concept has been the number one term over the last 2 years. Just to prove that it can work.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's huge. And then especially when you get into like hanging things, rigging things.
Yeah.
But then also one area where I've noticed it's kind of saved us is the wrong word, but saved us some hassle for sure is life safety. So fire marshal, things like
Yeah.
that. So getting down to, again, sometimes it is a matter of inches because if they want a 24-foot egress and that is
Hmm.
all that will work, and when you mapped it out roughly, it was 23 foot 2 inches. Well, that's going to cut, 200 people off of your capacity for your event. And if those tickets are already sold out, that's a problem. So sometimes it can be as simple as that as well, where just having accurate drawings in advance are very helpful. Another thing I think it does is I've noticed since we've started doing more detailed site plans and drawings, it actually forces a lot more advanced questions that
Hmm.
are very helpful and that we really should be asking. But a lot of times it's just, we're busy and we don't get to it. But, even things like, truck access and how are they going to make that turn into that property and those type of things. And when we're doing a full scale site plan using actual measurements, those questions and answers, we solve those problems, but a lot of problems get uncovered before we get to the job site, which means they also get solved before we get to the job site, it's been a big positive shift since we started doing a lot more visualization.
For certain, we compare it to when you do an event quote. You have a system that you go through, a rhythm, a cadence, a flow. You do where it is, how long it's going to be, how much you want to charge, what you're putting there. We find that the site plans or the site drawings promote conversation, promote that rhythm, cadence, flow, because you're looking for stuff. And if you get a hold of a good CAD guy or a good drawing team, there's consistent drawing parameters or best practices, as we call it, where the stage that I draw for you is always blue. It's blue until the cows come home. So if you don't see a blue stage on your plan, in your head, you're saying, well, first, that CAD guy, he's no good. He forgot the stage. But next, you're saying, where's my stage? Then it goes barricade.
Mhm.
Then it goes front of house cow trough. Then it goes front of house riser. And then, like I have a system for drawing, you have a
Right.
system for going down the list and saying, well, we're missing that. We're missing that because visually it's a cue.
Interesting. So you have, yeah, so that's your personal method of how you make sure things don't get missed and work through. Um, Interesting. So yeah, and it seems like something could easily get left off if you didn't. Speaking of left off, one of my favorite questions will transition a little bit here. Um, what is in your many years of experience, or your not so many years, you're so young and new here. Uh, what is the biggest production fail or event fail that you've experienced so far? And I guess if it was your fail, what did you learn from it?
Wow, what a question. My biggest fail was probably my third or fourth tented event. And I actually physically set up the entire event in the wrong tent.
Uh, Wait, so there were multiple tents on the property? You gotta give me a little more to work with here. There are
Yeah,
multiple tents on the property, or
yeah,
what's?
there was two tents.
Hmm.
So I had a 50-50 chance, right? Um,
Yeah,
so and
odds were
what's
good. Odds were pretty
odds
good, actually.
odds were pretty good, but yeah, one was a 40 by 60 and the other one was oddly a 50 by 70. So rule of thumb, and that's when I think that was 20 years ago. I think that's when I thought to myself, wouldn't it have been great to have a floor plan with
Mm.
dimensions on it? If somebody would invent a system that you could create a floor plan. No, that was a pretty. I don't think I've ever lived that one down yet. So
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 what? So it was a pretty elaborate setup. Like you did,
yeah, it was.
like how much stuff? How much stuff are we talking? Are we talking a couple tables? Or are we talking like
So
you
it
spent
was
12 hours with 12 people hanging garland from the ceiling?
and full production. So it was little Mina line arrays, custom stage with custom vinyl, custom facade. So I
So
think my
basically,
profit.
a full day worth of work.
Yeah, and then we had to take
Uh,
it down because the event was the next day, and they weren't having any of this. Hey, could you switch to tents to fix my mistake? And absolutely not. No, apparently that didn't go over well. So that was my third wedding ever, and it's luckily we can all laugh about it now, right? But
nice.
there were no pictures, there was no
What
video.
else are you gonna do? You can't take it
We
back now.
didn't have camera phones back then, so kind of saved me a little bit.
Nice. Yeah, we once set up in it was Rose and Shingle Creek, or one of the fancy, nice convention centers in Orlando. We once set up in the wrong room. That, however, that was not our fault. We had asked the facilities guy and all that to confirm, this is the right room, blah blah blah. And what they had
Mhm.
was they had air walled the room, and they put us on the wrong side of the air wall,
Right.
which was also one of those situations where it's like they couldn't just say, "Oh, never mind, we're doing it over here." Like there was a whole
Hmm.
flow to meals and what was happening at what time of day. So yeah, we had stuff hung, we had AV everywhere, just piles of gear. We had a stage built, trusses built, and we didn't quite get all the way set up on that, but we were way further than anyone would want to be told you're in the wrong room, and
It's
then we had to
amazing.
move it
It's an
all.
amazing feeling when you're told you're in the wrong place. Nothing
Yeah,
could really compare to that.
yep. It's funny enough, we actually early on we had a few of those, but I was not as good at uh, I feel like extracting all the details. I would get loose
Hmm.
details, which again goes back to the previs stuff. It's
Yep.
all of this has just become part of part of the checklist, part of the kind of portfolio of stuff that you do to ensure that your techs and your crew have what they need. So that's another thing we haven't touched on with previs
Right.
is um, the aspect of taking that. Now I have this plan. Now I have the layout. Now I have what it's supposed to look like. If I hand that to my production manager and my techs and anyone on my crew, they can go, oh, okay, that's supposed to go over there. And it really eliminates so many questions. Whereas when, if they're just looking at a gear list, if they're just
Hmm.
looking at a manifest, or, there's so many questions and so many things that are open to interpretation. Whereas if you can provide your text with that manifest, the gear list, as well as the visualization of what it's supposed to look like. The other thing that it's done for us is it's caused, there have been multiple times where our techs have caught things that maybe weren't on the manifest. Like,
Exactly.
oh, well, if we're doing this delay tower all the way over here, then we're going to need a whole nother power distro for that. And we don't have feeder and power distro. We're
Hmm.
missing stuff here. And then it gives them the opportunity again. It's just yet another thing in their in their pre-event checklist to go. It's another fail-safe. So it's not just relying on those of us in the office or those of us who are more on the sales side these days. It's giving the team more tools to execute with.
Yeah, there was a time there, and I pre COVID where life was so fast. Everything moved so fast, and I knew I was guilty of it. But to get quotes out the door, I would just write a warm and fuzzy description. I wouldn't actually give a quote. I'd just say, okay, this is $12,000 and you're going to have this. But I could produce this because I could draw it. And like you said, my warehousing, pre-making drawings mandatory, our warehouse would forget to pack stuff because there wasn't that communication or that bona fide checklist or that visual representation to say, okay, I see 5 pieces of truss at 8 feet, but you've quoted 8 pieces of truss at 8 feet. Which one is it? Before the drawing, they had nothing to compare. They just take the list as law, and we'd invariably have to make 3 or 4 trips back to the warehouse. Mm-hmm. Once the drawing started to become law, so we didn't eliminate it because you'll never eliminate, you know what I'm saying, people who make mistakes. But it affords your people that you hire in power positions to actually do something and not just follow a list like sheep and say, okay, well, Eric wrote it down, so we got to go by that. Like you said, they question it. Your warehouse ops team will question it. We don't have enough of this. We don't have enough of that. So as I mentioned, proof of concept, it rolls right down the line. You have to prove that the concept works, prove that what you designed and what you drew is what's on the list. And if it's not, then somebody has to make a decision as to why it's not on the list or how to fix it.
Yeah, 100%. It just kind of comes down to, that's been one of the big improvements on our end too, is all those steps where you're empowering your staff. It gives them also, I feel like, ownership. So your production management, your warehouse staff, as well as just each individual technician, the audio techs, the video techs, the lighting techs. It gives them the opportunity to take ownership of it, to understand it better, to make suggestions. So that's been a big one too. I bring it to the team and say, hey, this is what we're thinking. And they go, yeah, except for, that you're not going to get the angles you want out of the lights at that particular position. We either need to bring the truss out 10 more feet, or we need to go something with a wider lens angle, or whatever just giving random examples here. But it gives them the opportunity for them to use their expertise, their departmental expertise, to make adjustments, which ultimately make the event better, make the client happier, and all those things. So, I think all of that has been a big game changer in us streamlining. So how, this has kind of been the theme of the year, or the theme of the last 2 years. So how have things shifted, or how's it been? How's the pandemic treated you? How's things been going the last 18 months or so?
After we got over the shock of losing 100 plus events off our calendar, and you've heard the term pivot. I'm pushing 50. I know one thing, and that's production. That's events. That's all I know. Luckily, my little family and I, were in a position that we could leave the city and leave all of the expensive stuff that came with the city, because Tammy and I are forecasters. We can look ahead and say, the bottom's going to drop, and it's going to drop heavy. So we either pivot and do something that is going to benefit our family, or we stay and we cry about it. So we decided to pick up and lighten the fiscal load and move way up north with the moose and the black flies and the Arctic foxes. All things being equal, internet's vastly more expensive up north. But we were able to continuously support our designers, producers, and planners, and keep drawing for them, keep planning with them. We had enough reserves to hold up for whatever it's been now 18 months coming up on. And we're looking forward to the future. Like Eric said before, or you said rather, I did do some stuff in the Bahamas and Florida before, but all of that stopped when Canada saw fit to close the border for some weird reason. So we're just waiting for everything to open up again. Vaccinations are flying off the shelves, and stuff will come around. We like to keep our hands into everything. I know you and I are working on some projects moving forward. But generally speaking, we're just waiting. We didn't make any major life choices except to move up north, which we're moving back down south when things tend to open up a bit. But I'm doing good. I've got great friends all over the place. I got you in my corner, so I do appreciate the daily chats we have. But yeah.
Yeah, you've done a lot of great drawings for us, and then we've been making a little bit of a shift to we're actually promoting and producing a small number of events on top of we're still mostly focused on production. But you've been helping us get a lot of site plans and those things together as well, I know. But I'm glad to hear you've made it, and hopefully we're on the upswing. I know we are here in Florida, so hopefully Canada is not too far behind us in that respect. But let's here, I'll give you a couple. So I'll follow that pandemic question with if I do not, so I always preface it with that, I do not have $20,000 to give you, but if I have $20,000 to give your company or you as a freelancer designer today, what would you spend it on? What would be the big business expenditure there?
2 new computers, one being a massive gaming laptop for CAD designing mobile, and second would be a desktop with a video card that has been sold out for the last 8 months because people are doing Bitcoin with it. So
Ethereum.
Okay, Ethereum.
Sorry,
Bitcoin.
We may or may not have had to move our microphones because of my Ethereum miner in the background, but sorry about that. I do have a AMD 6800 for sale if you want to talk off
interesting. Yeah, we'll
later.
Don't put
we'll
that
chat
up for sale.
afterwards. Yeah, I got you.
And software and training. It's for me. It's pushing 50. I've lost a step education wise because I've been pigeonholing myself into one software title. Instead, I should have been pivoting into other software titles. But that pretty well. Do you have another 20 I could borrow?
No, that's pretty burned there. No, like I said, like I prefaced, I actually have nothing for you. So I will have some work for you in the coming year or two. Hopefully, as long as everything
I get the bill for.
Yeah, that eventually you'll get the bill for.
Yeah.
I think we're about even. I think we can start billing soon.
Yeah, we'd start.
Oh man, was that documented? I shouldn't have said that. Man, so you said you're pushing 50. Production's all you know, but if you let's just say, for argument's sake, if you were not in production, what do you see yourself? What would you be doing?
Oddly enough, baking.
Baking, like cakes and bread and stuff.
Bread and stuff, and pies and loaves and butter tarts. Oh, butter tarts! But I used to be a baker when I went to college, and I would wake up at 2 a.m. and work until 10 a.m, and then I had the rest of the day to basically do whatever I wanted. And I would just want to
go back to sleep all day.
Well, you kind of catnap and nap, but as a baker, you don't. You see, us production people have bigger aspirations. We always want to do something bigger and bigger and bigger. But as a baker, unless you're a franchise baker or one of those bakers that does those wild, crazy cakes, all you do is bake, and you're done baking. You don't bring the baking home with you. Well, unless you want to eat it. I'm saying you don't bring the job home with you.
Right. So, yeah. It's pretty straightforward. You either baked enough donuts or not that day.
And when you're sold out, you're sold out. There's no more.
Yeah. And then you go, yay, we sold out. We made good money today.
But with
go
events,
home and eat my bread.
With events, it just keeps going and going and going because you always strive to have that one better event.
Yep.
And you don't strive to have the one better loaf of bread. That's it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What is a restaurant that you love that you feel that more people should know about? This can be a local Toronto one. You've been in Gainesville a few times, a local Gainesville one. It could be a national or international chain, whatever you want.
What's that smokehouse around the corner from us? The
the little one, David's?
David's.
Yeah, with the like $5 lunch sandwich, the working man's special or whatever. I believe they are actually PC. They changed it to the working person special. I like it.
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's still $5.
Yeah, and delicious. Yeah.
That stuff should be everywhere.
Yeah. You guys probably don't have a lot of good barbecue in Canada, do you?
No, not so much. We got some smoked moose meat. I should bring you some.
Smoked moose meat. That sounds like an insult. So we'll wrap up here, but where can people find you? I would encourage people to look at your Instagram, so I'll let you give your handle in a second. I know you got a lot of your crazy, beautiful wedding events with all the sparkly stuff hanging and rigging, and then we'll also either we'll put it up here, or maybe we can tag some in your Instagram, but I'd like to show off some of your renderings and stuff too, some of what you do. Tell us where people can find you, follow you, find your stuff.
Internet is firedogcreative.ca. That's for Canada. Or firedog.events. That's for international. Same website, just different ending. FireDog Creative Inc. for Facebook, and just simply FireDog Creative for Instagram.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, so go follow Alan, check out his stuff, and if you need drawings, I know I can tell you he is one of the fastest and best I've ever seen, and even my guys who are drawing and quite good at it are a lot of times any challenging project, they're like, Alan could probably do this in like 2 hours. It's going to take me a week. So a lot of good bang for the buck, and a great resource. And I like Alan. I've loved working with you and getting to know you as a good friend over the last few years. But I think the thing I like most about you is you shoot it straight. As far as you'll tell me, hey, you can't do that. That's not going to work. But I like that you don't stop there. You say, what about this? Mm-hmm. And I imagine that's why a lot of your planner clients and planners and people with big dreams and aspirations and unrealistic expectations, I imagine that's probably why they like working with you a lot, is because you say, now, what you just proposed is not possible or not safe or whatever. However, I've got this option. So I just really wanted to give you
thank you.
Kudos there. You're a pleasure to work with. And I hope as many people as possible tap into your skills and your work. And hopefully $20,000 for computers will come your way soon.
Yes. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been a blast.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cheerful Soundman podcast. If you like the show, it would be awesome if you could subscribe and leave a review on Apple or Spotify podcast. And follow us on Instagram at The Cheerful Soundman. That would make our day. Either way, thank you for tuning in, and we really hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully you got a little something out of it too. Can't wait until we get to share the next episode, which will drop next Tuesday. So stay tuned, and until then, don't suck and don't be a jerk.